Hey there, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a deeply fascinating topic from the ancient world, the Ark of the Covenant. What exactly was this mysterious object described in the Bible? Why has it captured the imagination of scholars, explorers, and conspiracy theorists for centuries? And perhaps most intriguing of all, what really happened to it? Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I want to build a thoughtful community, not just numbers. Also, I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments below. I read every one of them. So now, settle in. Whether you're sipping tea or just tuning in on your commute, let's travel back to a time of prophets, kings, temples, and mysteries that refuse to be forgotten. The Ark of the Covenant, according to the book of Exodus, was not merely a religious symbol. It was the literal footstool of God's throne on earth. Built under Moses' guidance, following a divine blueprint revealed on Mount Sinai, it was a gold-covered wooden chest with two golden cherubim on top, wings outstretched toward each other. Inside it were placed the two stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, inscribed by the very finger of God, along with Aaron's miraculous staff that once blossomed, and a jar of manna, the strange substance that fed the Israelites in the wilderness. But the ark was more than just a container for holy relics. It was, in essence, a portable manifestation of divine power and judgment. When the Israelites carried it into battle, their enemies fell in defeat. When it was paraded around the walls of Jericho, the walls themselves crumbled without a single blow. But this power came with warnings. The ark was so sacred that even the priests could not touch it directly. It had to be carried using poles through rings on its sides, and even the high priest could approach it only once a year, on Yom Kippur, after elaborate purification rituals. There are stories in the Bible that are chilling in their simplicity, like that of Uzzah, who tried to steady the ark when the oxen carrying it stumbled. The moment his hand touched the ark, he fell dead. No second chances. No delay. It was an immediate, devastating consequence for touching something that, according to the scriptures, represented the very presence of God. This idea, that the ark was not merely symbolic but active, volatile, and dangerous, is echoed throughout ancient texts. When the Philistines, enemies of Israel, captured the ark and took it into their own temple, their god Dagon fell face down before it, and the people in the surrounding city began to suffer from plagues and tumors. Terrified, they sent the ark back to Israel with offerings and apologies, desperate to be rid of it. So if the ark was that important, that dangerous, and that central to Israel's identity, how did it just disappear? What's truly baffling is that the Bible, which describes events in meticulous detail, suddenly goes silent. The last clear mention of the ark is during the reign of King Josiah, around 620 BCE. After that, nothing. There's no dramatic scene of destruction, no explanation, no account of its removal during the Babylonian invasion in 586 BCE, when Jerusalem was sacked and Solomon's temple was burned to the ground. One day the ark was there, and then it wasn't. This silence has left a vacuum. And into that vacuum, over the centuries, have poured legends, theories, and quests. One of the most persistent traditions claims that the ark was hidden by priests in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem before the Babylonians arrived. Others believe it was smuggled out of the city entirely and taken to places far beyond Israel's borders. Ethiopia is one such place. For over 1,000 years, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has claimed that the ark resides in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in the ancient city of Aksum. According to Ethiopian tradition, it was brought there by Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This version of the story says that Menelik visited his father in Jerusalem, was entrusted with the ark, or stole it, depending on the account, and carried it back to Africa, where it has remained ever since. What makes this claim so fascinating is the unwavering seriousness with which it is held. The ark is kept in a sealed chapel, guarded around the clock by a single monk who devotes his entire life to its protection. He is not allowed to leave the grounds, speak to the outside world, or even be replaced until he dies. No outsider, not researchers, not historians, not government officials, has been allowed to see the artifact. There are no photographs, no physical evidence, just the solemn testimony of a line of guardians who say the ark is real, and that it's there. Of course, skepticism is inevitable. Without any way to verify the claim, the Ethiopian story remains in the realm of legend. And yet, there are tantalizing hints, centuries-old traditions, mysterious rituals, and even ancient Jewish communities in Ethiopia that seem to trace their origins back to Jerusalem. Other theories place the Ark in entirely different parts of the world. Some believe it lies buried beneath the Temple Mount, in secret chambers that could never be excavated due to political and religious tensions. Others have suggested that the Ark was taken to Egypt, hidden away in a sacred chamber beneath one of the pyramids, or locked in an underground vault in the ruins of Tanis, a city some associate with the lost Egyptian treasures of the Exodus period. Still others point to hidden European connections. The Knights Templar, the secretive warrior monks of the Crusades, were rumored to have discovered something beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, something that gave them immense power and influence. Some believe they spirited the Ark away to France, to Scotland, or even across the Atlantic. The legend of the Ark being hidden at Rosslyn Chapel or lost in the mists of Oak Island may sound like fantasy, but these theories persist for a reason, because the story refuses to die. And perhaps that is what makes the Ark of the Covenant so enduring. Its story is not just about a lost object. It is about power, fear, holiness, and the mystery of divine presence. It represents the ultimate untouchable, an artifact so sacred that to gaze upon it was to risk death. If it still exists, and if it were to be found, what would happen? Would its power still work? Would it change the world's understanding of God, history, and faith? Or would it unleash something we're not ready to face? Some scholars argue that the Ark's disappearance was not just a historical accident but a deliberate act of concealment. According to certain rabbinical traditions, the prophet Jeremiah, foreseeing the fall of Jerusalem, ordered the Levites to hide the Ark in a cave on Mount Nebo, the same mountain from which Moses once viewed the Promised Land. The location, they say, was sealed and has not been uncovered since. This version of the story implies that the Ark remains hidden, waiting for a time when it will once again be revealed, not by chance, but by prophecy. And then there's the account in the second book of Maccabees, a text not included in the Hebrew Bible but preserved in certain Christian traditions. It describes Jeremiah taking the Ark, the altar of incense, and the tabernacle and hiding them in a cave, declaring that the location would remain unknown until God gathers his people together again and shows them his mercy. This story adds a layer of intentionality, suggesting that the Ark was hidden not just to protect it from invaders but as part of a divine plan that has yet to unfold. For centuries, the idea of discovering the Ark has obsessed explorers, theologians, treasure hunters, and rulers alike. During the Crusades, Christian knights scoured the Holy Land not only to reclaim territory but to recover sacred relics. The Ark was at the top of their list. The Templars, with their deep connection to the Temple Mount and their reputation for secrecy, became central figures in these legends. Some believed they found the Ark, and from it gained secret knowledge that made them too powerful to be left alive. When the Templar Order was dissolved, many whispered that they had hidden the Ark away, along with other treasures, in places far from the reach of kings and popes. Even modern archaeologists have pursued the Ark's trail. In the 20th century, a British scholar named Sir Charles Warren conducted excavations near the Temple Mount and found ancient tunnels and chambers that he believed could once have housed the Ark. Political tensions and religious sensitivities, however, brought the dig to a halt. In Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, even a rumor of digging can lead to unrest. The area is so contested, so emotionally charged, that a serious search for the Ark beneath it is nearly impossible. Despite this, there are those who remain convinced that the Ark lies directly under the Temple Mount, possibly in a chamber that has remained sealed since the days of Solomon. Supporting this theory are ancient writings that describe the original temple as having secret compartments and subterranean storage areas, designed precisely to protect the holiest objects in case of invasion or desecration. If these chambers exist and the Ark is within one of them, then it might be the greatest hidden treasure in human history, buried not beneath the sands of a foreign land, but beneath the feet of thousands of pilgrims who walk the Temple Mount each day without knowing what lies below. In the book of Revelation, there is a cryptic passage that adds to the mystery. It describes the heavenly temple being opened, and the Ark of the Covenant being seen within. For some theologians, this suggests that the Ark's true location is not earthly at all, but celestial, that the physical ark was a shadow of a heavenly reality. Others interpret this passage as symbolic, representing the restoration of divine presence at the end of days. But to those searching for the ark in the physical world, it raises an unsettling possibility. What if the ark has already been taken, not by men, but by God? And yet the search continues. In popular culture, the ark has taken on a life of its own, especially after the release of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. While the film was fictional, it captured something very real: humanity's deep hunger for mystery, for contact with the sacred, for the rediscovery of something ancient and powerful that we feel must still exist, if only we could look in the right place. Museums, documentaries, novels, and conspiracy theories have all fed into the enduring fascination with the ark. But beyond the noise and speculation, there remains a core of reverence and fear. The ark was not just a treasure. It was the embodiment of divine authority, divine judgment, and divine presence. If it were found today, the consequences would be far-reaching. Religious communities around the world would respond, some with joy, others with suspicion or panic. The discovery could spark spiritual revival, geopolitical tension, or both. Imagine the implications of unveiling an object that directly connects to the foundation of monotheistic faith, that holds the stone tablets written by God, that has not been seen in over 2.5 millennia. Some believe the ark's return would signal the beginning of a new age. Others fear it would trigger chaos. Either way, it would not go unnoticed. But perhaps the deeper mystery is not where the ark is, but why it was allowed to disappear at all. In a religion built on ritual, symbols, and divine encounters, the loss of such a central object is not something to be taken lightly. It suggests that at some point, the physical representation of God's presence was no longer needed, or no longer permitted. Perhaps its absence was an act of mercy. Or maybe, it was a judgment. Maybe humanity was not ready for what the ark truly meant. Maybe we still aren't. And so the ark remains, in stories, in sacred texts, in whispered traditions passed down through generations. Its power, whether real or symbolic, has never faded. It sits at the crossroads of faith and history, myth and archaeology, warning and promise. And somewhere, perhaps still intact, perhaps still hidden, it waits. Some have proposed that the ark's disappearance coincided with a shift in the way humanity connected with the divine. During the time of Moses and the early prophets, God's presence was understood to be physical, manifest, and terrifying in its immediacy. The ark was not merely a symbol of that presence, it was that presence. But as the centuries passed, prophecy waned, the temple was destroyed, and the focus of worship gradually moved from encounter to remembrance, from presence to faith. Without the ark, the people of Israel had to find new ways to understand God, not through thunder and gold, but through scripture, through tradition, and through prayer. In a strange way, the ark's absence may have deepened spiritual life rather than diminished it. Yet still, something in us longs for it. This is perhaps the most fascinating part of the ark story. We do not need it, strictly speaking. Religious traditions have endured without it. Temples have been built and rebuilt. Worship has continued for millennia. And yet, we cannot let the ark go. Why? The answer may lie in the way the ark bridges the human and the divine. Most sacred relics are about memory, bones of saints, fragments of the cross, sacred texts, all pointing backward, preserving history. The ark, however, is different. It points forward. It was never just a reminder of the past. It was a living covenant, an agreement between heaven and earth, a direct conduit of divine will. Its presence was not static, it was dynamic, even dangerous. It moved with the people. It won battles. It punished wrongdoing. It demanded reverence. In that sense, the ark is not just a missing artifact. It is a lost relationship. It's worth asking what kind of world would allow that relationship to be restored. If the ark reappeared tomorrow, undeniably real, unmistakably powerful, what would we do with it? Could any government handle it? Would any religious institution agree on how to treat it? Would people rally around it, or would they fear it, distrust it, try to control it, weaponize it? Would we, in our modern world of skepticism and technology, even believe it was real? Perhaps that's the point. The ark story forces us to confront the tension between myth and fact, between belief and proof. It dares us to ask whether some mysteries are meant to be solved, or whether their power lies in remaining unresolved. There is something holy about mystery. Something sacred in the unknown. Maybe that's why the Ark has never been found, despite centuries of searching. Maybe it was never meant to be owned or displayed. Maybe it was only meant to be followed. And yet, the search continues, in deserts, in vaults, in scrolls and ruins, in satellite images and ancient maps. And not just by scholars or treasure hunters, but by ordinary people drawn to the possibility that there is more to this world than what we see. That buried beneath centuries of politics and stone and silence, there remains a spark of something untouched, waiting to be revealed when the time is right. Because ultimately, the Ark is not just about gold or relics. It is about the human desire for communion with something greater. A desire that reaches across history, across cultures, across every religion and every age. The Ark, in all its mystery, stands as a symbol of that longing, for holiness, for justice, for truth. It reminds us that once, in the ancient days, something powerful walked among us. Something that could not be controlled, only approached with fear and trembling. And maybe, just maybe, that something still lingers, just beyond our reach, but never beyond our imagination. There's a peculiar consistency across cultures when it comes to the idea of sacred containers, objects not just of beauty, but of power, responsibility, and sometimes danger. From the Ark of the Covenant in Israel to the ancient Mesopotamian tablets held in ziggurats, from the Buddhist relic boxes said to contain fragments of the Buddha's remains to the reliquaries of medieval Europe, civilizations have always created vessels to hold more than just objects. They hold stories, covenants, consequences. The Ark stands among these as the most enigmatic and possibly the most feared. It wasn't just a box, it was a boundary between the mortal and the divine. This theme, of humanity being entrusted with something far beyond its understanding, is not limited to religious texts. It echoes through mythology and literature, across continents and ages. In Greek mythology, there's Pandora's box. In Norse legend, there's Mjolnir, a weapon so powerful only the worthy can wield it. In every instance, the lesson is the same: power, especially divine power, must be handled with reverence, or not at all. So what happens when power disappears? When something that once stood at the center of a nation's spiritual and political identity simply vanishes? For Israel, the loss of the Ark signaled more than just the end of an object, it marked a turning point in their history. The Ark had gone before them in battle, rested in the Holy of Holies, and served as the resting place for the covenant itself. Without it, they had to find new ways to be a people, new ways to carry their faith. And they did. But they never stopped wondering where it went. Over the centuries, the idea of the Ark has evolved. To some, it became a symbol of messianic hope, a sign that one day, when the time was right, it would be returned, and with it, a new era would begin. To others, it became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the holiest things can be lost when taken for granted. And to some, it became an obsession, the object of quests, missions, and even espionage. There are classified reports, whispers in intelligence circles, of state-sponsored expeditions quietly searching for biblical artifacts, including the Ark. Some believe that during World War II, both the Nazis and the Allies had teams combing the Middle East for clues. The idea wasn't just religious. It was strategic. Whoever controlled an object so ancient and powerful might claim not only divine favor but cultural supremacy. After all, if you could prove possession of the original Ark, the implications would ripple far beyond theology, into politics, science, and global power structures. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Ark's mystery is this: what if it has already been found, and hidden again? What if someone, somewhere, uncovered it and realized the world wasn't ready? It's not unthinkable. History is filled with discoveries buried again, sealed away, kept from public view to avoid panic or misuse. And if any object could trigger such a reaction, it would be the Ark. Think of the implications. Scientists would demand tests, carbon dating, analysis. Religious authorities would clash over its significance. Nations would argue about ownership. And people, billions of people, would be forced to reconsider what they believe about God, about history, about themselves. Could something that disruptive be allowed to surface without unraveling the fabric of modern life? Or would the discovery of the Ark demand a sacrifice, not just of certainty, but of control? Maybe that's why, if it still exists, it has remained hidden. Maybe it's waiting for a moment not of conquest, but of humility. Not for a nation, but for a generation willing to approach it not with ambition or curiosity, but with awe. And yet, for all the speculation, for all the legends and late-night theories and secret vaults supposedly holding ancient relics, the Ark of the Covenant continues to resist the modern world. It doesn't fit into neat categories. It's not something you can catalog in a museum or reduce to a bullet point in a textbook. Every time someone thinks they've found a clue, a matching set of measurements, a chamber in some ancient ruin, a line in an apocryphal text, it leads only to more questions. The Ark's greatest weapon, it seems, isn't its supposed divine power. It's its ability to evade closure. This is not an accident. The Ark is not simply lost, it is veiled. It sits in a cloud of mystery that mirrors the very cloud said to have hovered above it when it rested in the tabernacle. In the biblical account, the presence of God would descend in a thick cloud upon the Ark, filling the Holy of Holies with such intensity that even the priests had to leave. It was a place where the seen and unseen met. A place beyond language, beyond understanding. That veil has never lifted. Not fully. And perhaps it never will. The question then becomes not where is the Ark, but what does it still mean to us? Why do we keep searching? Why, in an age where we've mapped the genome, photographed black holes, and sent probes beyond the solar system, do we still chase a golden box described in ancient scrolls? What are we hoping to find? Proof of God? A sense of purpose? A lost connection? The search for the Ark is, in many ways, the search for meaning in a world that often feels fragmented and uncertain. We are not just looking for an object. We're looking for a link to something older, something purer, something that might tell us who we are beneath all the noise. In a world filled with distraction, the Ark stands as a reminder of focus, of a time when people built something not for themselves, but for a covenant with the divine. And yet, if it were found, what then? Would it still carry the presence it once held? Would it still strike down the unworthy, or part rivers, or speak from between the cherubim? Or has its power faded, or been absorbed into the world in ways we cannot measure? Perhaps the Ark's disappearance was not a loss, but a transition. A shift from visible to invisible. From object to idea. Maybe its role was never to be found again, but to stir longing. To remind us of the weight of sacred things, and the cost of forgetting them. In this way, the Ark still speaks. Not through miracles or thunder, but through silence. Through the absence that refuses to be ignored. Through the stories we keep telling, generation after generation, hoping that in telling them we draw a little closer to truth. Not just about a box, or a temple, or a vanished artifact, but about ourselves. About what we believe. About what we fear. And about what, in the quiet places of our hearts, we still hope might be out there, waiting. Consider for a moment that the Ark was always meant to vanish. Not as a failure of record-keeping or a casualty of war, but as part of its destiny. It had fulfilled its role during the wilderness years, through the conquests, through the reigns of kings. It had been the centerpiece of a covenant made in fire and cloud and thunder. But covenants evolve. They are not always tethered to objects. Sometimes, their weight moves inward, into memory, into conscience, into the sacred architecture of the soul. This might explain why so many traditions, Jewish, Christian, even Islamic, reference the Ark in ways that are less about possession and more about promise. In Jewish eschatology, the Ark is expected to return with the Messiah, to once again rest in the rebuilt temple. In Christianity, the Ark is often viewed as a precursor to Christ himself, the presence of God dwelling among men, first in a gold-covered box, later in human flesh. In Islam, though mentioned only briefly in the Quran, the Ark is associated with divine reassurance and legitimacy, a sign of God's favor and presence. And so across these faiths, the Ark lives on, not in gold and wood but in hope. In prophecy. In expectation. What makes this especially powerful is that the Ark, in all its grandeur, was also deeply intimate. It was carried on the shoulders of men. It rested in a tent. It traveled dusty roads and crossed wild rivers. It wept with the people in exile and stood silent when they turned away. It was not distant. It was dangerously close. And in that closeness lay both comfort and terror. Because to carry the ark was to carry accountability, to live in the knowledge that the divine was not watching from afar but walking beside you, judging, guiding, remembering. That's a difficult presence to live with. Perhaps too difficult for a civilization drifting into idolatry, complacency, or fear. Maybe the ark was hidden not only to protect it from destruction, but to protect us from what it demanded. Maybe it asked too much. Holiness, after all, is not safe. It requires something of us, something deep, disruptive, and real. And perhaps that is the real reason we continue to search for the ark. Not because we want to own it. Not even because we want to see it. But because deep down, we want to be reminded that there is still something in this world that cannot be reduced to data or scanned by satellites. Something wild and weighty and untouchable. Something that cannot be explained, only approached. In that sense, the ark's mystery is not a flaw in the story. It is the heart of it. It is the heart of it because the ark challenges us to remember what sacredness really means, not just reverence or ritual, but the awe that stops us in our tracks, the silence that humbles us, the weight of being in the presence of something greater than ourselves. Whether it lies buried beneath stone, locked in a sanctuary, taken into heaven, or dissolved into legend, the Ark of the Covenant endures as a mirror, reflecting our longing for truth, our struggle with power, and our deep, unshakable belief that somewhere, somehow, the divine once touched the earth, and may yet do so again.